I want to take just a moment to tell you a little bit about my background and experiences. I am currently serving as the Northern Virginia Chair and Professor of Public Policy in the Schar School at George Mason University. I am also the Director of the Center for Regional Analysis at George Mason. The center is very much like a consulting operation housed within the university. We do projects for clients in the public, private, nonprofit sectors regarding a wide range of economic analysis, economic development, strategic planning, and various other market issues related to transportation, housing markets, labor market analysis, but all of it with a general theme that is meant to promote regional economic competitiveness. How do regions better attract businesses, how they grow their populations, and how they address community development issues through the provision of equal opportunity to jobs and growth. I have a little bit of a different background from many professors. I spent 10 years after I got finished with my bachelor's degree working in the private sector. My undergraduate degree is in marine transportation, and I received a license as a third mate on ocean vessels of unlimited tonnage. Unfortunately, in 1982 when I graduated, it was very much like some of your colleagues and classes are experiencing now. There just simply weren't jobs available in the industry I trade for when I graduated. It was just a very tumultuous economic time in 1982. So I moved into a little bit different industry field, and I concentrated on more domestic transportation issues, trucking, railroads, and then a little bit of international through shipping and air transportation, things like that. As part of what I was doing in the private sector, I eventually got into doing site location work for distribution centers. So in other words, the company I was working for, a manufacturing firm, would say that we needed to have some representation in the southeastern United States, and I would figure out where it made sense to be from a geographic perspective, as well as access to our markets, the transportation networks, whether or not there were the right kind of buildings available for us, the labor market situation. And we would pick a place, I'd negotiate the lease for the building, and then in some cases actually go to that location and do a startup operation. I went back to school for a master's degree that I got in applied economics at the University of North Texas, in part because what I wanted to do was to study some of the theory behind what I had been doing in practice in the private sector. I got offered a job as a graduate research assistant at a center called the Center for Economic Development and Research, and then was hired on a full-time basis once I graduated. I stuck around at North Texas and got a doctorate degree in information sciences while still working at that center, and then a number of years later, I became the director of that center. 6 years after that, I was recruited by a friend and colleague who worked at GMU to come and run the Center for Regional Analysis, and I've been here since the fall of 2014. A lot of the projects that we do seem very dispersed. So, some of it's economic forecasting, some of it is looking at housing markets, and some of it is economic impact analysis, which things that says that if you build this stadium, this is how many jobs get created. You've seen that kind of stuff in the newspapers before. It all, as I suggested before, is about things dealing with economic competitiveness. Now, we get to do some really interesting work here recently. I've been working in Tulsa, Oklahoma, with a group that's doing transportation planning, but the piece that I am working on is a strategic economic development plan that's focused specifically on new mobility, micro-mobility, and things like electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles, and what are the industry opportunities specifically around those type of activities. It's a really interesting project, and in part some of what we're talking about is also how do you reshape a city like Tulsa, a Midwestern, mid-sized city, and use transportation infrastructure and networks as a way to make the city more attractive to attract talent, so that people of your age, when you graduate from school, you say, hey, that would be a neat place to live, in part by the way you can get around town. It's kind of an interesting phenomenon. We've done work for the Virginia Economic Development Partnership, which is the state economic development agency dealing specifically with importation of materials that are used in Virginia manufacturers. We've done work for the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality about how you value protected lands And also, what are some of the economic opportunities that can be realized in protected lands? So, for example, ecotourism and industries like some aquaculture industries that actually, if you keep the land more pristine, the surrounding waterways become cleaner and more productive in terms of fisheries and seafood production. We've also done a good bit of work more recently that's focused on the crisis being caused in our economy by COVID-19. So right at the moment, we have a proposal out there for an interesting project that, if funded, we will be working to design training programs to take people that may have lost their jobs in the hospitality sector and give them some basic skills to go to work in the technology sector. If you talk to technology firms, one of the things that they will tell you is that they need people who can still communicate well with other people, that have those soft skills. They're important. They can find lots of people who can program, but they need people that can talk about that or serve as customer engagement reps, or maybe it's even internal communications and training. And we think that people that have experience in the hospitality sector, if you give them some technical training to go along with their people skills, that gives them another alternative other than just sitting there, wondering when are the bars going to open more permanently, when can I get back to my restaurant hotel job. And it may be that that's what you want to do as a career. Fine, nothing wrong with that. But an interesting little piece of data that we found in our preliminary analysis is that in the DC region, about 36% of bartenders hold a bachelor's degree. Over 30% of wait staff hold bachelor's degree. Now, some people, that's a career choice. Maybe they studied hospitality management, but for others, maybe this would give them an opportunity to utilize that degree in a different way if added in with some training. So the point of all of this is that my background is quite diverse. It is centralized around the notion of regional economic competitiveness and understanding how cities can shape their economic development outcomes for all of their citizens, because we are intensely focused on the idea of equity of opportunity, which we're overdue for that, quite frankly. So I'm hoping to be able to bring in a lot of these experiences and a lot of this work that I have done elsewhere into the classroom, so that whenever I'm giving you an example of a theory or a particular practice, I can show you a particular example of that as a part of the learning process.